Good morning, Westplex. Steve Casper in the studio at Westplex Radio for What About Nutrition? Stand by. You're going to have a wild ride talking about skin conditions today and what you can do about that. It's all being brought to you by our Nutrition Central here in the Westplex, and that would be O'Fallon Nutrition in their new location at Mexico Road and Highway K in O'Fallon. And we have David Gall, Mr. Nutrition, with me again here this morning. How you doing, David? Oh, wait, let me turn your microphone on there. Sorry. So how you doing, David?
Well, Steve, I'm doing so much better now that I got my voice back.
Yeah, it's good to have your voice back there, David. Now, remember, folks, these statements have not been evaluated yet by the FDA. This program is not intended to treat, diagnose, or cure any disease or condition. Always consult your health care practitioner before making any changes to your supplements or lifestyle. And again, it's great to be here for What About Nutrition on Westplex Radio. This is about skin conditions and it's something that we haven't talked about as yet, right, David?
Well, that's right, Steve. We've talked about a lot of issues that would surround skin conditions, things like allergies to wheat or yeast overgrowth, that show we did on Candida. But no, we've never done a skin condition show yet. And this is really going to be a fun one because this is one of the issues that really got me into nutrition. This was one of my personal issues really throughout my adolescence. And it was a big mystery to me. You know how important things are when you're 10, 11, 15, 18 years old.
Well, skin conditions, I mean, all young people have oily faces. They get all these pimples and stuff depending on their diet and how they clean their face. But that was very traumatic. I mean, going through high school, especially freshman through senior, with skin problems and acne. I mean, just that alone, I experienced that. None of the other stuff, but just that was just terrible.
Oh, yeah, and these kinds of things can really, really bring you down and affect your life. There were periods in college where my face would quote unquote flare up, and I would have basically all this eczema on my face and swollen red marks on my cheeks that were almost like hives, and then they would get flaky skin on them, and it really, really bothered me quite a bit. And you're right, acne can be at least just as traumatizing for teenagers and adolescents.
Yeah, because they're also at an age where they're becoming a woman or becoming a man, and they've changed a lot in the last few years, and all of a sudden you get these big pimples on your face.
Right.
It's like, what?
It's not fair. You're in the prime of your life, and you're the youngest you'll ever be, and then here your face betrays you.
Yeah.
And I think it's a good point. We should touch on acne a little bit in today's show as well. So I had these issues as an adolescent and all the way through college, really. And it was really a mystery to me. These problems would come and go. Sometimes my face would be pretty calm, and with just some moisturizer, I could kind of cover it up. And other times, like I said, I had these big, 1.5-inch long welts on my cheeks. I used to wonder if my right cheek would ever look like normal skin again. And I could, not to be gross, but to be frank, I could take my fingernails and rake them across my scalp, and those fingernails would be filled with dead skin. Yeah, I mean,
that's true though.
Really gross, but I'm sure that there's folks listening right now who have had to go around and secretly had dandruff and had to hide it, or constantly, in the words of Jay-Z, brush their shoulders off. And it's really not fun. And I had all these experiences trying different products, different shampoos, different lotions. I went to a dermatologist in Omaha, Nebraska, where I lived back then. And, of course, I had the he barely looked at me situation. Not that they're all like that, but unfortunately I had one of those stereotypical experiences where, after waiting for months for this appointment, this dermatologist came in, and I swear he didn't look at my face before he started writing a prescription for a steroid cream. And, I really found that frustrating. And I even asked him, well, can't we investigate this? I was about 18 at the time, maybe a senior in high school. And he said, no, I just think you need this. And then I think he also prescribed me an antibiotic ointment for my eyebrows, which were a particular trouble spot. And I said to him, you mean you think this is caused by bacteria in my face? And he said, yeah, I think so. And that was really it. And of course, it did not work. My issues continued to get worse. And I had this big mystery because periodically it would just flare up, and I had no idea why. And to tie this up and get to the point, bought O'Fallon Nutrition in 2002. And part of my goal, and that was right out of college. I was only 22 years old.
Man.
One of my goals was that I thought, hey, maybe I'll be able to fix my own issues. Maybe I'll be able to determine what's causing my eczema at least, or what might be contributing to it. Maybe I can come up with some strategies to support my skin health, and perhaps I won't have this issue anymore.
And you did, because you're a dead ringer for George Clooney. You are.
I'm a younger, slightly less handsome,
Yeah.
slightly chubbier version of George Clooney.
Yeah, chubby.
Just barely.
Maybe less handsome.
I'm going to give him a run for his money, though. As he gets older and I get into better and better shape, we're going to cross paths.
I think everybody's less handsome than George Clooney. You know, that's a pretty safe statement. But anyway,
pretty safe. I mean, I guess I could.
Yeah.
Anyway, so had this rough eczema and these problems and these flare ups on my face, and it would hurt too. That's what sometimes people don't tell you is eczema or psoriasis can hurt. It can burn and it can sting. And of course, I also had some issues at the same time, fatigue and mood issues and digestive issues. And I think these were all caused by some issues that I'm going to come to in a moment that I think also contributed to the eczema. So, all right, let's talk about what I think contributes to these issues.
okay.
We have folks come into the store pretty often for questions about eczema and psoriasis. And so I've had this conversation probably hundreds of times over the last 10 years. And the conversation goes something like this. I will ask them what they eat. I will ask them if they have been on antibiotics much in the past. I will ask them if they also have other symptoms like fatigue. Do they have digestive issues? Do they have mood issues? Do they have a susceptibility to other allergies? Do they have arthritis? Often, some of the answers to these questions are yes. And often, the answer to how do you eat, usually after poking and prodding, what I learn is that they're almost always consuming large amounts of wheat. They're almost always doing, sandwiches using bread, wheat for breakfast, wheat for dinner. Now, many of these folks believe they have a healthy diet, and often in some ways they do. And many of these folks, claim, oh, I'm eating great, and they don't understand that certain foods, such as wheat, can be a common food allergen. So the other issue is that they're usually on a fair amount of sugar, I find. And this is if I start poking, and then usually I try to find connections with folks' flare-ups who have psoriasis or eczema. And if I ask enough questions, a pattern starts to emerge. And that pattern usually resembles something like during periods like Thanksgiving or the holidays or birthdays or other events where it could even just be the weekend, where these folks increase their consumption of refined carbohydrates like white flour, like white bread, white pasta, as well as sources of sugar and alcohol. They tend to follow these periods with flare-ups. Now, often they haven't noticed, or they believe that their flare-ups are a result of the weather or the time of year or stress. And all of those things, I believe, also can be contributors. However, almost always, until we bring it up, they've never actually made the connection with their diet. And to tie this into a little bow, we've worked with a lot of folks with eczema for years. I wrote a nutrition paper that was 20 pages long on a gentleman who has pretty severe eczema, or actually I should say psoriasis. And we've been able over the years, we can change his diet and change his eczema almost on the fly. And this is fascinating. When we take this gentleman off of wheat and off of sugar and off of alcohol, his eczema and psoriasis always calms down substantially. In fact, he was able to get off of steroids, which was the only previous method he had of controlling this.
Right.
And not everyone can do that, but this gentleman was able to do that just by tweaking his diet. And it's interesting. To this day, we're friends. We became friends after dealing with all of this. And so if he has a weekend where he consumes a lot of alcohol, and usually when you consume a lot of alcohol, you end up consuming some other naughty things as well, his psoriasis flares up tremendously.
Wow.
It can go from nearly healed to covering half of his scalp and part of his face. And we've done that dozens of times where we've pulled his diet back and then kind of let him also eat poorly again. The eczema flares up. When he calms it down and gets off of sugar, wheat, and alcohol, it almost always calms down. Now, simultaneously, we've used some supplements at the same time. And what I think I'll do in our last 2 minutes here of part one is I'm going to try to briefly sketch the bare bones basics of what's going on internally with this eczema and psoriasis. And then when we come back, we can talk about the supplements that we sometimes use in more depth.
Okay.
So this will be a good challenge for us to kind of summarize this.
Yep.
In a nutshell, what I think is happening with these folks, and for now we can just call this my opinion, although it's generally what's regarded as the method that creates it within naturopathic medicine as well. What I think is going on is that folks' guts are reacting to this food. There's a condition known as leaky gut syndrome where the holes through which we absorb nutrients in the gut can become enlarged. If these holes become enlarged, things that we shouldn't be absorbing directly into our bloodstream, such as undigested gluten or other undigested proteins or substances, can pass across the lining of the intestine directly into our bloodstream. When these substances go into the bloodstream that shouldn't be there, the immune system has no choice but to attack these substances. Now, we've talked about this in the allergy show as well, and this is a concept within alternative medicine behind, it's a theory, let's say, behind autoimmune diseases. So this is a theory about not only how eczema and psoriasis can come about, but a theory about how certain autoimmune diseases may also come about. So these particles that shouldn't leak through the lining of the gut leak through, the immune system attacks them, and then we start to develop symptoms. We can develop psoriasis or eczema. We can develop arthritis. We can develop other itis or inflammatory issues. We can develop allergies. And focusing on the eczema angle, when we come back, we can talk about 3 or 4 different categories of substances we can use to counteract some of the main reasons that we flare up when we have issues such as psoriasis or eczema.
All right, folks, we're going to come back with part 2 of today's show, What About Nutrition, with David Gall, Mr. Nutrition from O'Fallon Nutrition in their new location, Highway K and Mexico Road. We will be right back.